flying at 7 miles a minute, about 250 feet above the ground, about the height of an electricity pylon. It's often been attacked by enemy aircraft. It's high stress, it's high adrenaline, but it's huge amounts of fun, I have to say. Absolutely fantastic fun. By the time I got to about 18, there was a slight issue. I was starting to understand why I felt just that little bit of an outsider. The elephant in the room. Well, it was dawning on me that I was gay. And I know it's probably not the right thing to say, but at that age, I was mortified. I felt embarrassed. I felt ashamed, but I was in total denial. Now, being gay and being in the military, these two big issues in my life at the time, it was going to be a major problem, yeah? And I think of sort of resilience as like a big oak tree in the kind of middle of winter. It has to weather storms and it wobbles around. It doesn't fall over because underneath it's got a strong root structure. And that's kind of how I managed to weather my storm. Now things get a little bit more difficult. I get selected to do the course, which you'd probably call is similar to the Top Gun film. You've got to use your imagination here, ladies and gentlemen. You've got to think that it's not in California. It's actually in Anglesey. It's not blazing sun and we're playing beach volleyball with our shirts off. It's actually horizontal rain. But in the air, it's not dissimilar. It's all the air combat, dogfighting, bombing, things like that that they do in Top Gun. I started questioning the suppression of the real Matt. I started getting really dark thoughts in my mind and losing clarity of thought. And unfortunately, it all happened. And there's no coincidence, but it all happened just when workload started going through the roof. And it was a nurse who had psychiatric training, sat on my bed on and off for a couple of days. And she was the first person that said to me, I think you're suffering from acute stress. Now, I couldn't speak to her because she was in the army. So it was a double-edged sword. So the stress was starting to affect me mentally. It was starting to affect me physically. And it was also starting to affect me professionally. So that was the end of my fast-jet career. That was a calamitous mistake. Now, I had reached the limit of my ability without a shadow of a doubt. So I'm not using this as an excuse. But without a shadow of a doubt, the internal dialogue that had woken up because of the pressures of work and I wasn't able to share it with anybody got on top of me. 1 hour later, I walked out of his office a different person, professionally, of course. But more interestingly, privately, I was different. Tom allowed me to talk about my elephant in the room, thing I'd not really spoken to anybody about. Tom allowed me to empty my head of anger, paranoia, conflict. And I was trying to think of a way of describing it. It was as if I'd held my breath for 27 years and then suddenly I exhaled. My elephant in the room was that I was gay, okay? Everybody has an elephant in the room sometimes. You know, it could be something like a family dispute. It could be a breakup from a lover. It could be adapting to the new norm, COVID, for example. We're just not very good at talking and sharing about these issues. And what about your individual company culture? What's that like? You know, I've been talking about LGBTQ plus things, but it's anybody that's marginalized. And I think company cultures have got to have hierarchies. They've got to have somebody in charge. But that relationship between the junior and the senior is so important. And bearing in mind there's power there as well. When you're junior, think about me in that crew room. I didn't have the courage to say, stop, this must stop. I didn't have the position in the organization. But my final thought really is have a look at Tom. What did Tom do? Tom championed the junior. He had a very personable style of leadership and he was humble. But the key skill that Tom demonstrated to me was empathy. Is I think, how can I be a bit more like Tom? What would Tom do in this situation?